Welcome back to another episode of Breaking Cults. I'm your host, Carly West, and today we're going to be rewinding episode 4, The Great Escape of Caroline Hicks. I'm taking you back into the family history vault. It's a real place, buried beneath the mountains of Utah. You can really hear my Intermountain West accent. The mountains of Utah. I'm going to attempt to say it like a normal American. Mountains. So awkward. Mountains. And also when you say Utah, you can't just say Utah. You need to say Utah. Gotta get that Western drawl. All in good fun. We're gonna have a good time. So we're gonna be revisiting The Great Escape of Caroline Hicks for extra behind the scenes commentary. And I think it's really neat that as one of Caroline's direct descendants, she's one of my third great grandmothers, that I'm able to tell this story. And it's a passion project. I put a lot of work into the audiovisual narrative, all the editing that it took to make it immersive. Something else that I think is really neat, not only about this story, but just studying family history in general. So I've been studying Mormonism and family history for a decade, and I'm always learning something new. That's the really cool part, is that you learn the official narratives, and you learn these subterranean narratives. I'm always learning something that I didn't know before about my family history. There's things that you're supposed to know, and then there's things that you aren't supposed to know. But just to recap, essentially Caroline was coerced. She was 14 at the time, coerced into a polygamous marriage with her own bishop. She fled this polygamous marriage of her own volition, and even though she was rescued by these male heroes like her love John and her brother George, she was the leading actor, choosing this for herself, breaking the confines of the societal expectations of the time that she lived in. And also that she went on to have a big family with John Westmore, and they all adored her, and John was a widower for the rest of his life for 42 years. That's pretty hardcore, especially in 1800s Mormonism. So I think that's part of the reason why you won't hear this kind of a story. You won't hear it from Mormonism because it doesn't fit their narrative, because she's fleeing from religious ecclesiastical abuse. And you also won't hear it from ex-Mormonism circles because it's not a religious exit narrative. She was a real person, in other words. She wasn't a caricature of what you think of when you think of 1800s Mormonism and polygamy. And she also isn't a caricature of feminism either. It's a unique perspective for the fact that it is told from a brother-sister relationship, because it is her brother George chronicling his life. But the detail of Caroline having climbed out of the window in her escape did not come from George's account, but from her own granddaughter's account. So that is an example of one area in which I took a bit of creative liberty into making the narrative cohesive and unified. We can go ahead and get back into it. I'm going to replay the audiovisual narrative, and periodically I'll be pausing it to add commentary. And if you'd like to watch the version without commentary, I'll link that in the description box below. So as always, grab your hot drinks, your So Delicious, your coffee, tea, and hot chocolate. Let's go.
It's common to write the history of the great and powerful, but that's not my story. I am one of the toilers, one of the hewers of wood and drawers of water. I am now just over 43 years old and have lived more than 25 of those years in Utah. I know her history. I have endured trials alongside the poor and humble people of this territory. I've watched Utah grow, and I've played a part, though not a public one, in her development.
I just want to say right here, all of this is archival vintage footage from Utah.
My sympathies are with the poor of the land. It is they who build up a country, and I do believe the Lord himself looks kindly on them, for it was to them this gospel was first preached. I was born in Upper Canada in a little Chippewa-named town called Singwakusia, Little Pine Tree. My father, George Barton Hicks, hailed from County Fermanagh in the north of Ireland. He was raised Methodist and came to Canada with his family when he was 17. My mother was also born in Ireland and came to Canada with her family. She was better educated than most women of her time, strong-willed, and proud of her family's heritage. Her father was a well-known Methodist preacher and a bitter enemy of Mormonism.
This entire thing kind of reminds me of the mythology of Persephone, taking place over generations, but a summary of the mythology is that she is abducted by Hades and becomes the queen of the underworld. If Caroline's mother had just listened to her father, none of this would have happened to Caroline. But then I wouldn't be here, so it all works out in the end.
She married my father in 1834, and I was the first fruit of that union. Joseph Smith, the prophet and founder of the New Faith, came to Canada himself. He spoke powerfully, testifying that an angel had appeared to him and given him the Book of Mormon. He preached in a barn owned by William Law, who would later become a prominent member of the church.
Oh, you have no idea. Stay tuned for more on that.
As with most new ideas, the faith quickly drew opposition along with followers. Many of our former neighbors, who once shared our beliefs, turned against my parents. They refused to speak to my family or be seen with them in public.
This is really sad, and it goes to show you how even outside of cultic systems, how people themselves and social groups themselves can also be cultic.
In November of 1839, my parents arrived in the town of Commerce. I remember it clearly. There were only a few scattered houses among the trees. The land was hilly and unfamiliar, and to my young eyes, it felt far from home. My father quickly got to work building a place for us to survive the winter. He put up a rough log cabin without a floor or even windows. That winter was a harsh one, though we were used to severe cold back in Canada.
Mormons did suffer, and they did build cities.
When spring came, the town's name changed. Commerce became the city of Nauvoo. People began arriving from all over the world, and lots were claimed across the growing city. My father secured a lot near our original cabin, and we built a new log house there. Soon, we had neighbors all around us. Orchards were planted, fine buildings went up, and what had once been a lonely wilderness was transformed by hard work into a thriving, fruitful place. I had 4 sisters. The eldest, Jane, was born in Nauvoo, Illinois. To me, no boy ever had a sister so sweet. She was beautiful, bright, and wise beyond her years. But like many such children, her light was not meant to stay long, at only 2 years and 4 months old. Even now, more than 30 years later, I still feel the weight of that loss. I mourn her as one whose place in my heart can never be filled. But I live in hope that I'll see her again on the other side of the beautiful river.
Something I think is really interesting about George's writings is it really exposes the lie that men in these times didn't care at all about the inner worlds of their mothers and sisters and wives, etc. Because George has thus far recounted his mother's inner world, things about her personality, and he also has now recounted the inner world of his little sister at 2 years old, who she was as a person.
My second sister, Caroline, was also born in Nauvoo on March 1st, 1844, just a day before Jane's passing. She was a woman beloved by all who knew her.
Because I only had a limited number of image generations, I was more focused on making sure that the horses weren't blending into the humans and creating some centaur monstrosity, or making sure that the human hands had 5 digits. So one detail that's not exactly correct is that Caroline was not a brunette, she had black hair.
She came into the world just a few months before the prophet was killed. And I have not the least doubt that polygamy was the cause of the death of Joseph and Hiram Smith. It was the rock the church came near splitting upon in the days of Nauvoo. I have a perfect recollection of when the doctrine of plural marriage was first introduced. It was practiced in secret, and the young women who entered into it were called spiritual wives, or spirituals, as they came to be known. Many in the community viewed them with suspicion, and some questioned their character. Yet they seemed to carry themselves as though they were above the common herd of the saints.
The secretive nature of it gave them the ability to act out on their relational aggression, to be able to exclude others, to feel superior to others, to feel like they were in the in crowd, others were in the out crowd. And women still do this today. Themes that I discussed even in the first episode of this podcast, where the women in these systems did get a sense of power and social power from being a part of this. And it gave them power over others in the community, specifically power over other women.
They dressed alike, modestly, but with long sunbonnets that shaded their faces, and would gather together apart from others.
Notice the inverted pentagram.
On Sundays, they could be seen speaking in hushed tones, holding quiet counsel with one another. Many feared falling in love, only to find that the girl had already been sealed. That's what the secret marriage was called, sealing. Despite what some Josephites later claimed, I know polygamy existed in the church before Joseph Smith's death.
This is a fact now. Even the Mormon Church, the LDS Church, admits that Joseph Smith was practicing polygamy before his death, but at the time, like the Nauvoo Expositor, horrible lies that are being written by this printing press. We must burn the printing press to the ground.
At first, it was mostly older, already married men taking young women as additional wives. But soon, influential men began to covet others' wives. Some men, claiming high priesthood authority, would approach women alone and suggest their current husbands couldn't exalt them, encouraging them to seek a higher man.
I would cite Commandment 7 and Commandment 10 of the 10 Commandments. Thou shalt not commit adultery, and thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's goods.
It was widely whispered, and I believe it to be true, that even Joseph had several such sealings, including to the wife of William Law.
Oh, we've heard that name before.
My own mother once saw Joseph and Law's wife riding in a carriage together while William was away. Many believed she had been sealed to the prophet. William Law was eventually excommunicated. It is a well-known fact in the history of Nauvoo that the Mormons became the bitterest enemies to the Laws. I have every reason to believe they were unjustly persecuted. Their homes were burned, their property wantonly destroyed, and their families driven from the city. While plural marriage in Nauvoo had been practiced in secrecy, life in Utah felt healthier, even happier. There was a spirit of unity among the saints, and people generally treated each other like true brothers and sisters. Plural marriage didn't seem as troubling here as it had back in the States. In truth, the public nature of it did not prevent abuse or manipulation.
And while it's much more romantic and cinematic to picture Caroline and John escaping on the same horse, her holding onto his waist, but realistically, because they rode from Spanish Fork up to Salt Lake City, that's over an hour drive, especially when you consider all the traffic, well over an hour drive nowadays. So imagine by horse, and they're trying to make a quick getaway, that would really slow the horse down. It's much more romantic to think about them riding a horse together, but realistically, maybe not so much.
Especially when power was involved. My own family was not untouched by this. In the spring of 1861, my wife and I left the area where we had been living. The bishop there was A.K. Thurber. Thurber was a man of dark character. While serving in that position of trust, he seduced my younger sister Caroline into a polygamous marriage.
The real troubling thing here is not just that Bishop A.K. Thurber was an older suitor or that it was a polygamous marriage. The truly troubling thing was that he was her bishop, and that she was, of course, a teenager in puppy love with someone closer to her own age. Her and John Westmore were basically like Mormon Romeo and Juliet.
Before the marriage could be consummated, Caroline locked Thurber out of her bedroom, then made a daring escape with my friend John, her true love, and me, her brother George. John went on to become a prominent man of the territory and of the faith. I helped Caroline obtain an annulment from Thurber, and this made me subject to his lasting ire. No private man could enter the endowment house without a recommend from his bishop, and there was no way Thurber would grant me one after I opposed him so openly. I refused to submit to his humiliating terms. At that time, I still believed in the importance of these ordinances. I believed they mattered more than all else.
Him being her bishop was such an issue because he had not only control over her, but also control over her family.
Many honest saints placed endowment house ceremonies above good homes or worldly success, and I was one of them. But the ordeal with my sister and the power Thurber wielded showed me how corrupt and dangerous polygamy could be in practice. It was a bitter lesson that left scars and began to crack my faith in the system I'd once trusted. I believe polygamy caused more division in the church than any other doctrine. I've never known a woman truly happy in it. I've never received a spiritual confirmation of the truth of polygamy, and I've never seen it bring the peace of the gospel.
Something that makes George's account so interesting is that he was there for all of it. He was there prior to the death of Joseph Smith. He was there during. He was there after the exodus to Utah. So he saw everything. Had the wisdom to write all of this down, because it's so important for us today, looking back, to see what life was like at those times, and for him to give a chronicle not only of his life, of, hey, here's the good, the bad, the ugly of this institution. And he paid the price for what he did to save his sister. So it really shows how people survive in imperfect human systems, man-made systems. Even when those systems claim to be divinely inspired, Caroline and John were willing to risk everything to be together, and that John was willing to square up to his own bishop and, challenge him to win the hands of the princess. The bishop had all the institutional power behind him, and John is just some kid on a horse, and he bucked it all. Bucked the whole system. Still managed to win, and then went on to make something of himself. He did many things throughout his life. He served as an officer in the Nauvoo Legion, a precursor to Utah's National Guard. He was a representative in the territorial legislature. And in his free time, he was a poet. So to close us out, I'm going to share some lines of his poetry.
In this journey of life, when troubles assail and all seems gloomy around us, when misfortunes and envyings seem to prevail and mysteries seem to confound us, do not sink in despair, but arise from the gloom. Seek higher than man for protection. For by seeking for comfort in cavern or tomb, we but sink into deeper dejection. Though our pathway through life be gloomy and sad, and those we thought friends prove our foes, look above through the clouds, there's a glimpse to be had of a gleam that will lighten our woes. And if we prove true to mankind and God, that light will be constantly streaming and illumine our pathway as onward we plod, and all doubts be dispelled by its gleaming. O man, through thy trials and cares stand erect, fear none but omnipotent power. For the hand that created the earth can protect and give light in the gloomiest hour. And if through your life in your conduct with men you have the path of integrity trod, throw fear to the winds, be truthful, and then stand erect. Thou art the image of God. John Westmore, Spanish Fort, Utah, 18th July 1894.